Why do you wear the same thing every day? How come you're always in black? Don't you get bored? How can you express individuality when most Emiratis wear the same thing? These are the questions I was asked the most when I first came to university. These questions have generated both confusion and discomfort for me, mostly because I've never asked these questions myself. However, I was and am still happy to answer these questions. Raised in Abu Dhabi, I've been surrounded by abayas my whole life, from my mother to my teacher to some Muslim figures I see on TV. For those of you who do not know, a abaya is a loosely tailored black fabric that females wear. And I've come to learn that the abaya is central to the Middle East. And that was it. I never questioned the abaya because it was so normal to me. Yet to others, it was so unusual. As a kid, I'd always steal my mom's abaya and play adults with my sister. And children are not expected to wear abayas before puberty. And for the Emirati youth, that was a choice we made and were not forced into. Abayas represented adulthood for me. I only started wearing a abaya on a daily basis about 3 years ago, and it made me feel like a grown, elegant Emirati woman. Because prior to wearing the abaya, I wore casual jeans and a shirt, and it did not give me that sense of pride that everyone feels when they wear their traditional attire. People would ask me, "Isn't it annoying? Doesn't it get hot in there?" The abaya gives me a sense of home and a sense of belonging. How could it possibly be annoying? Plus, it's the most comfiest piece of clothing I could ever think of. Like, I could be wearing my pajamas right now, and none of you would know. Through my interactions with my university, I've become more conscious about the abaya, its value, significance, and history in our culture, because of these questions that have been directed at me. Many of my non-Emirati friends associate the abaya with ideas that women are forced to wear them and are living in an oppressive society. So at the beginning of my academic year, and after being bombarded with questions, I went to ask my mother about the abaya. And she told me that the abaya originated as a response to a hadith said by the Prophet, may peace be upon him, which stated, women should dress loosely and modestly in public. There are many other forms of clothing that developed to adhere to this hadith, like the shalwar khamis, for example, worn in South Asia. However, as the abaya developed in different contexts, it has come to take on different meanings. A meaning that many people associate the abaya with is form of oppression. It represses women and disables their freedom of speech. The abaya is also seen as limiting individual expression of personality. Although that might be the truth in some cases, it is not the case in every context. In the Emirates, as opposed to oppressing women, the abaya liberates and unifies them. And therefore, I'll be speaking in terms of the Emirati context because that is the context I live in and I'm familiar with. Whenever we travel, we don't wear our abayas. So every summer, I became nostalgic to the flow of the abaya and the feeling you get when many people who identify with the abaya surround you. And let me tell you something I think is funny. In the UAE, most Emirati men wear the traditional kandora, which is a loose white fabric, yet they are not perceived as oppressed. However, I'll not get into that right now. That is a totally different TEDx talk that I'll spare you from today. Last November, when I was in India, I was surprised to stumble across a few abayas at the malls because here I thought abayas were only happening in the Middle East. So I went to research how abayas got to India, and I found that in India, abayas are a symbol of luxury and connections to the Gulf. I was surprised at the adaptation of the abaya there, so I went and asked my mother about how the abaya got to the UAE. Again, she was surprised at this question, and she thought she was brought up wearing the same style of abayas I'm wearing and surrounded by the same types of abayas I'm being surrounded by. So we went to ask my grandmother, our source of all cultural answers, and she told us that in the UAE, the abaya first started as a sheer black cloth that women placed on their heads like this, which my grandmother still wears on a daily basis. The abaya then evolved into a thicker, longer piece that covered the woman's body, and a smaller piece that covered the head, the shela. The abaya and the shela became a crucial part of the Emirati heritage because of its ability to sustain and accommodate in the fast-changing world of fashion and the UAE itself. The abaya fashion industry is so huge in the Emirates that we have special malls dedicated for selling abayas. We have special abayas for special occasions, including weddings, which are a little bit sheer so you can see the dress under them. We also have the casual day-to-day abayas, which women can customize in an open robe-like style or closed, and winter abayas, which are a little bit thicker because it gets really cold in the UAE. Of course, there are many other forms of abayas that women can choose from, and they can pick whatever they feel comfortable with. And to adapt what Coco Chanel once said about a dress, about a black dress, when an abaya is right, there is nothing else to wear in its place. I personally prefer to wear all black buttoned down abayas with embroidery on the sleeves and the sides of my abaya, while some of my friends like to incorporate more color and graphic designs. As you can clearly see, the abaya I'm wearing is completely different from the abaya my friend is wearing. And if people were to pay attention to these small details, they wouldn't have assumed we were all wearing the same thing. Abayas have maintained their historical significance, a delicate fabric that shows a woman's modesty in public. They've acquired a new significance. Today, they're a combination of self-expression with a fashion statement. Although the abaya unifies Emiratis, it still represents one's individuality. We all express ourselves through our abayas, and and unlike the popular conception that the sole purpose of abayas is to hide women's body from men, they're a huge part of Emirati fashion, and they represent many different things, from loyalty to individual taste, to fashion of the season, to the occasion. I say all of this to make an obvious point. A abaya will never go unnoticed. For some, the abaya is oppressive. For others, it is peculiar. For me, it's normal. Wearing a abaya is a choice that many Emiratis make. Just like wearing your favorite t-shirt today is a choice you made. Abayas represent loyalty and patriotism, and the idea that even through all this development, we will never forget our culture and our heritage, just like our late leader and father, Sheikh Zayed Al Nahyan, may he rest in peace, once said, he who has no past has no future. However, not wearing a abaya does not make one less Emirati, because being Emirati is not about wearing your abaya, or wearing your kandora, or driving fancy cars. This all Emiratis have fancy cars stereotype has definitely followed me to university. I've had people come and ask me, how many Lamborghinis do you own? And I go like, no, I like Ferraris more. I don't even own a driving license. Why would I own a Lamborghini? And they go like, oh, don't all Emiratis own Lamborghinis? I'd like to think that being Emirati is about our generous hospitality and welcoming attitude. It is about believing in our leadership and viewing them as role models. Being Emirati is about achieving your dreams, and abayas do not act as an obstacle like many people think they are. Recently, the UAE ranked first in the Social Progress Index for treating women with the most respect. I imagine this might come as a shock to some people, because it challenges ideas that many have about Muslim women, an idea that casts us all, 1.6 billion Muslims, under a single label. This label partly advanced because of Islamophobia, which adds on to the misconception of abayas. Although some Muslim women are oppressed, just as some Jewish women are oppressed, just as some Christian women are oppressed, the unfortunate truth is that women all over the world are oppressed because of and regardless of their religion. And it is not fair to categorize all those who are Muslim or all those who wear abaya as oppressed just because of their choice of clothing or their choice of religion. One needs to go beyond these barriers in order to fully understand and grasp the culture, and to tackle the forces that breed oppression in all forms. I chose to talk about abayas because that is a stereotype I was a victim of. We're all guilty of believing in stereotypes. However, we should not let them be an obstacle to our understanding. We shouldn't let these ideas and misconceptions build walls between cultures. Instead, we should use them to start a conversation with each other, ask questions and not be afraid. And not only ask others questions, but also ask ourselves questions that will help us grow and gain knowledge. Sticking to what is familiar to us adds on to the barriers that already exist between cultures. Asking questions may be uncomfortable, but silence suppresses change and development in our world. I'd like to encourage each and every one of you to ask questions and not be afraid, because if we don't start asking these questions, then who will?